All right. Okay, well, Shabbat Shalom, family.
Shabbat Shalom.
So I have been given the great pleasure of substitute teaching here at the Ark this week. It's a great honor. Please go easy with the bricks. I would appreciate that. So what I want to go ahead and let you all know, and by the way, Shabbat Shalom out there to the 12 tribes worldwide and to our companions who walk in truth. I want to just go ahead and open this up with a brief prayer. Abba Yah, please be with me today as I bring forth this word. May my words not come from me, but from you through me. Help me to show the world that your word is proven through prophecy. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, who is the word made flesh, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so the name of today's lesson is Proven Through Prophecy. The Bible is a very fascinating book. It is a book that is unique from every other so-called holy book, the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, all of those other books, the Eightfold Path. And there is one thing that sets the Bible apart from every other book, and that's the fact that it's proven through prophecy. None of these other books have an unblemished track record of fulfilled prophecy.
Amen.
And we're about to go through a few key events prophesied in the Bible that will play it out on the world stage to demonstrate that the Bible is indeed the most holy word of Yah. Something very interesting. In the Guinness Book of World Records, which I should have up on the screen right here, you see that the best-selling book of all time, categorized as nonfiction, is the Bible. Nonfiction. Very interesting that they have a quote-unquote religious book categorized as nonfiction. What do they know that they're not talking about? So you hear these academics come up and they mock the Bible. Oh, that was written by Bronze Age goat herders. It's about talking snakes and men made from dust. What a silly book. But behind the scenes they go, that's a nonfiction book. They know something. There are over 5 billion units sold according to their estimates. That's almost enough Bibles for every person on earth to have their own copy. Okay? That's real talk. So let's get into it. Let's see what Yah said about his holy word. We're going to read Isaiah 46, and we're going to read the whole chapter. We're going to read a lot of whole chapters today.
I ain't afraid.
All right.
Come on.
So Isaiah 46 is our opening text. And in this chapter, for the sake of context, this is Yah rebuking his people for idolatry. And he's drawing a line of comparison between those false gods and himself. Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth. Their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavy loaden. They are a burden to the weary beast. They stoop, they bow down together. They could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. Hearken unto me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are born by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. Even to your old age I am he, and even to the hoar hairs will I carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry you and will deliver you. To whom will ye liken me and make me equal and compare me that we may be like? They lavish gold out of the bag and weigh silver in the balance and hire a goldsmith and he maketh it a god. They fall down, yea, they worship. Pause here. How many of y'all see those Christians walking around with their Jesus piece?
Yeah.
Got that nice cross dripping with gold and diamonds. Yeah, they're making a false god too. They just don't realize it. We don't do that in our walk. We don't make any graven images. We don't need them. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Verse 7. They bear him upon the shoulder. They carry him and set him in his place. And he standeth. From his place shall he not remove. Yea, one shall cry unto him, yet he cannot answer, nor save him out of his trouble. They're talking to deaf, dumb idols that can't even move. Here's the kicker. Here's the point of this whole chapter. Remember this and show yourselves men. Bring it again to mind, O ye transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am Elohim, and there is none else. I am Elohim, and there is none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. Calling a ravenous bird from the east, the man that executeth my counsel from a far country. Yea, I have spoken it, and I will bring it to pass. I have purposed it, I will also do it. Hearken unto me, ye stout-hearted, that are far from righteousness. I bring near my righteousness. It shall not be far off, and my salvation shall not tarry. And I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. Hallelujah. See, the Most High, he's telling you, he is different from all these other gods because he declares the end from the beginning. The Bible tells you the end from the beginning. Bold prophecies that always come to pass. That's why people come talking to me about the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Oh, you know the 1,348 sayings of Ma'at precede the Bible. It's in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But the Egyptian Book of the Dead has no prophecies because it's a dead book.
Right.
Our book is alive. It has prophecies that are unfolding even now. So today we're about to go through some of the highlights. Now just quick note, we're actually going to skip over the messianic prophecies because there are so many of those that came to pass. We'll be here all day. We're just going to talk about some of the more obscure prophecies that people don't focus on. Okay, hallelujah? Hallelujah. Okay, let's talk about the destruction of Israel. We all know about Deuteronomy 28. We all know about the perfect prophesying of the transatlantic slave trade thousands of years before it even occurred. So there's no need to beat a dead horse. I just want to pick out a few key things and then we'll move forward. Let's go to Deuteronomy 32. And we're going to be in verses 16 through 26. Now this is the Song of Moses. For those listening, if you have not taken the time to read the entire Song of Moses, you really should. Because again, the Most High tells the fate of our people, the end from the beginning before we even entered into the Holy Land. That's what the Song of Moses is about. And by the way, it's mentioned in Revelation. It'll be sung by the angels when we are delivered. So it might be a good idea to be well acquainted with this portion of the text. Again, Deuteronomy 32, the Song of Moses. We are going to start at verse 16. They provoked him to jealousy with strange Elohims. With abominations provoked they him to anger. They sacrificed unto devils, not to Elohim, to gods whom they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. Of the rock that begat thee, thou art unmindful, and hast forgotten Elohim that formed thee. And when Yahuwah saw it, he abhorred them because of the provoking of his sons and of his daughters. When the Most High saw, this is the prophecy before we even enter the Holy Land, he said, when you guys enter into the Holy Land, your people, Moses, are going to go a-whoring after other gods. They're going to anger the Most High, and he will do many He will visit many evils upon them, and these evils are prophesied in the Song of Moses. So just want to again lay context since we're jumping in midstream. Now, verse 20, and he, Yah, said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end shall be. For they are a very forward generation, children in whom is no faith. They have moved me to jealousy with that which is not Elohim. They have provoked me to anger with their vanities. I will move them to jealousy with those which are not a people. I will provoke them to anger with a foolish nation. Wait, is he saying that he's going to have a bunch of fake Jewish people pretend to be his people to provoke his people to jealousy?
Yeah.
Proven by prophecy.
Yes.
Proven by prophecy. The whole world knows those people as the people of the book in perfect fulfillment of this. So let's move on. There's so much more.
Come on with it.
Right.
For a fire is kindled in mine anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountain. I will heap mischiefs upon them. I will spin mine arrows upon them. They shall be burnt with hunger, and devoured with burning heat, and with bitter destruction. I will also send the teeth of beasts upon them, with the poison of the serpents of the dust. The sword without and terror within shall destroy both the young man and the virgin, the suckling also with the man of gray hairs. And here's the really interesting part. I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. So you pop up and say, hey, we're the real Jews. We're the real children of Israel. Everybody looks at you like you're crazy.
Right.
But only one group of people has been scattered into corners. Yeah. Only one group of people has had their history deleted through slavery in perfect fulfillment of prophecy. And it's all here. He told you the end from the beginning.
Come on now. Come on now.
Ain't no book like our book. Ain't no book like our book.
Hallelujah.
Okay?
Glory.
So let's move forward now and let's talk about something else interesting, because we're talking about the mischiefs that were heaped upon the children of Israel, right? We read all the time about cops killing our people. And they get off scot-free most of the time, don't they?
Yeah.
Didn't you know that was in the script? Let's read about it. Zechariah chapter 11. And if anybody doesn't want to spend too much time flipping through, just keep in mind that it's right here on the monitor. And for some crazy reason, I have a version that I don't like. So let's go to that good old King James. Okay. Zechariah chapter 11. Okay. Verses 4 through 5. Thus saith Yahuwah my Elohim, feed the flock of the slaughter, whose possessors slay them, and hold themselves not guilty. And they that sell them say, Blessed be Yahuwah, for I am rich, and their own shepherds pity them not. See, these are the curses. These are the curses that remain on the children of Israel, possessed by all world empires throughout history, slain with no recompense. These words were spoken against us, and they hang on us even unto this day. It's a sign, right? So, let's take just a few quick excerpts from Deuteronomy 28. I'm not going to read this whole chapter. If there's any chapter that a conscious Hebrew is familiar with, it's Deuteronomy 28, right?
Right.
I'm just going to bring out a few things and we're going to move forward. Deuteronomy 28, starting at verse 49. Yahuwah shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. And he shall eat the fruit of thy cattle and of the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave either corn, wine, or oil, or the increase of thy kind, or flocks of thy sheep, until he have destroyed thee. Key part here, this is what I want to bring out. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates, until thy high and fenced walls come down, wherein thou trusted, throughout all thy land. And he shall besiege thee in all thy gates throughout all thy land, which Yahuwah thy Elohim hath given thee. Verse 53, here it is. And thou shalt eat the fruit of thine own body, the flesh of thy sons and of thy daughters, which Yahuwah thy Elohim hath given thee, in the siege and in the straitness wherewith thine enemies shall distress thee. This is a prophecy of our people cannibalizing one another. And it came true not just once, but twice in our history. Come with me to Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 10. Let me get that up here as well. This happened twice, and it happened twice in our history. First, at the siege of Jerusalem, mounted by the Babylonians. The Babylonians came against us and surrounded Jerusalem and starved us out. Jeremiah witnessed all of this, and he wrote about the aftermath in the book of Lamentations. So again, we're going to Lamentations chapter 4 and verse 10. We're going to talk about what Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, wrote about. Yep, Lamentations 4 and 10. Okay. All right. So here we go. The hands of the pitiful women have sodden their own children. They were their meat in the destruction of the daughter of my people. Now that's poetically written, but if you look at that word sodden, what it means is boiled. You can look at it in other translations. Even in the horrible NIV, with their own hands, compassionate women have cooked their own children who became their food when my people were destroyed. The fulfillment of a horrific prophecy that would occur to our people if we disobeyed the Most High. So that's one fulfillment. That's the siege of Jerusalem mounted by the Babylonians. Here's another one. How many of you guys are familiar with Flavius Josephus? Flavius Josephus is a Yehudi during the war of the Romans against the Yehudim. He went to the Romans essentially as a scribe. So he was a historian who was with the enemy. Some may call him a sellout, but I think the Most High put him there to record the history. Right. Here's what he wrote about the siege of Jerusalem all the way in the future in 70 AD. This prophecy was fulfilled multiple times. I have it up on the screen here. This is his excerpt from the Roman Jewish War. Ignore the Jewish, book 6. Okay. Among the residents of the region beyond Jordan was a woman called Mary, daughter of Eleazar, of the village of Bethusba. The name means house of hyssop. She was well off and of good family, and had fled to Jerusalem with her relatives, where she became involved with the siege. Most of the property she had packed up and brought with her from Perea had been plundered by the tyrants. Simon and John, leaders of the Yehudim war effort. The rest of her treasure, together with such foods as she had been able to procure, were being carried by their henchmen in their daily raids. She was robbed by her own people. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. In her bitter resentment, the poor woman cursed and abused these extortioners, and this incensed them against her. However, no one put her to death either from exasperation or pity. She grew weary of trying to find food for her kinsfolk. In any case, it was by now impossible to get any. Wherever you tried, famine gnawed at her. Famine gnawed at her vitals, and the fire of rage was ever fiercer than famine. So, driven by fury and want, she committed a crime against nature. Seizing her child, an infant at the breast, she cried, "My poor baby, why should I keep you alive in this world of war and famine? Even if we live till the Romans come, they will make slaves of us. And anyway, hunger will get us before slavery does. And the rebels are crueler than both." Her own people, crueler than both. "Come, be food for me, and an avenging fury to the rebels, and a tale of cold horror to the world to complete the monstrous agony of the Yehudim." With these words, she killed her son, roasted the body, swallowed half of it, and stored the rest in a safe place. But the rebels were on her at once, smelling the roasted meat, and threatening to kill her instantly if she did not produce it. She assured them she had saved them a share, and revealed the remains of her child. Seized with horror and stupefaction, they stood paralyzed at the sight. But she said, "This is my own child and my own handiwork. Eat, for I have eaten already. Do not show yourselves weaker than a woman or more pitiful than a mother. But if you have pious scruples and shrink away from human sacrifice, then what I have eaten can count as your share, and I will eat what is left as well." At that they slunk away, trembling, not daring to eat. Although they were reluctant to yield even this food to the mother, the whole city soon rang with the abomination. When people heard it, they shuddered as though they had done it themselves. Prophecy's pretty cold, huh?
Yeah.
Going back to Deuteronomy, just a few more verses I want to bring out. So let's go to verse 54. Now I just want to highlight the fact that our people are still marked by these prophecies even unto this day. Let's talk about family dysfunction in Israel. It's all right here in Deuteronomy 28. That's why it's good to be well acquainted with this chapter. Verse 54. "So that the man that is tender among you and very delicate, his eye shall be evil toward his brother." That old black on black crime that you keep hearing about, it's right here in the script too. "And toward the wife of his bosom, and toward the remnant of his children, which he shall" what? Leave. How often do we hear about that in our families? Daily. It is a common occurrence for our fathers to leave the woman and the children. It's right here in the Bible. Verse 55. "So that he will not give any of them of the flesh of his children whom he shall eat, because he hath nothing left him in the siege and in the straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in all thy gates. The tender and delicate woman among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground for delicateness and tenderness, her eye shall be evil toward the husband of her bosom, and toward her son, and toward her daughter, and toward her young one that cometh out from between her feet, and toward her children, which she shall bear. For she shall eat them for want of all things secretly in the siege and straitness, wherewith thine enemy shall distress thee in thy gates." Couple of things here. We see that the women were prophesied to stay with the children, but be abusive toward them. We see that a lot too, don't we? Mama stays, but it's hard on mama. She's harder on them kids. I see it on YouTube every day. It breaks my heart to see some of the abuse that goes on in Israel. That's why we're out here trying to tell our people to return to the covenant, because they're being destroyed by these curses. But they mark us even unto this day, because the book is alive. It's a living book, unlike all that other claptrap religious nonsense out there. Okay? And of course, we see, again, the cannibalism, that the woman would eat her child secretly. Didn't we just read that in Josephus's account? She roasted and ate that baby secretly. They only came upon her because they smelled the roasting flesh. Terrifyingly accurate, proven through prophecy. So let's move on. Let's just recap one more thing about this whole siege of Jerusalem. We know that the Messiah prophesied this, right? This came straight from the lips of Yahushua. So let's go to Luke chapter 21, and we'll just go from 20 to 24, just real quick. Just want to point out that the Word made flesh also prophesied of the siege of Jerusalem. Everything in the book is terrifyingly accurate. That's why the Guinness Book of World Records, folks, they have it categorized as nonfiction. They know. They mock the book publicly, but in the shadows, they fear this book. Luke chapter 21, verses 20 through 24. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Then let them which are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries enter thereinto. For these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. Deuteronomy 28 and Leviticus 26, right? But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people. Oh, and here's a key verse. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away into all nations, not just some, not just Germany, all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Yeah. Here's a good time to talk about the former president of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser.
What you say?
What did he say about the Ashkenazi Jews?
You left black, but you come back white.
You left black, but you came back white.
And we'll never accept you.
And we will never accept you. He said they are Hebrew-speaking Gentiles. He said it. Don't believe me. You know the rule. Don't believe me. Pull out your smartphones and check it for yourself.
Cover of Time magazine.
And let me check this camera real quick. I'm getting some kind of weird notification. Okay. All right. So, he said that they are Hebrew-speaking Gentiles. Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. We are not in our own land. Japhethites are in our own land pretending to be us, the foolish nation that the Most High said he would use to provoke us, okay? Now, here's a good time. If anybody happens to have some kind of battery to plug up my phone, an extension cord, that would be great, because I'm at like 20% and I guess it's ticking down. This whole Go Live thing really sucks your battery life, doesn't it? Thanks for the warning, Moray. Appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, I know he's got like a tech support team. Most of them are helping me out. Appreciate you, Yazi.
No problem.
I do have a charger over there in my backpack too. If you, okay. Really appreciate the help. Okay, so here's something else that I want to talk about, and I'll try not to be too long. The fate of Egypt. If you go to Ezekiel chapter 29, we'll just run through this chapter and the next one real quick, because we'll talk about what was prophesied to happen to the Hamitic Egyptians. We know that the folks that are in Egypt today are not the originals, right?
That's right.
We know that they're Arabs, right?
Right.
The original Egyptians were Hamites. They were Africans.
Yes.
Okay. Ezekiel chapter 29. In the 10th year, in the 10th month, in the 12th day of the month, the word of Yahuwah came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak and say, Thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, Behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, which hath said, My river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. But I will put hooks in thy jaws, and I will cause the fish of thy rivers to stick unto thy scales. And I will bring thee up out of the midst of thy rivers, and all the fish of thy rivers shall stick unto thy scales. And I will leave thee thrown into the wilderness, thee and all the fish of thy rivers. Thou shalt fall upon the open fields, thou shalt not be brought together nor gathered. I have given thee for meat to the beasts of the field and to the fowls of heaven. And all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am Yahuwah, because they have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel. Remember, during this time, our ancestors were running to Egypt looking for help against Babylon and also against the Assyrians at different times. But they were relying on Egypt to save them. That's what the Most High is talking about. Verse 7, When they took hold of thee by thy hand, thou didst break and rend all their shoulder. And when they leaned upon thee, thou breakest and madest all their loins to be at a stand. Therefore thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, Behold, I will bring a sword upon thee, and cut off man and beast out of thee. And the land of Egypt shall be desolate and waste. And they shall know that I am Yahuwah, because he hath said, The river is mine, and I have made it. Behold, I am against thee and against thy rivers. I will make the land of Egypt utterly waste and desolate, from the tower of Syene even unto the border of Ethiopia. No foot of man shall pass through it, nor foot of beast shall pass through it, neither shall it be inhabited 40 years. And I will make the land of Egypt desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate. And her cities among the cities that are laid waste shall be desolate 40 years. And I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations, and will disperse them through the countries. Yet thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, at the end of 40 years, I will gather the Egyptians from the people whither they are scattered, and I will bring again the captivity of Egypt, and will cause them to return to the land of Pathros, southern Egypt, into the land of their habitation, and they shall be there a base kingdom. It shall be the basest of the kingdoms, neither shall it exalt itself any more above the nations. For I will diminish them, that they shall no more rule over the nations. And it shall no more be the confidence of the house of Israel, which bringeth their iniquity to remembrance, when they shall look after them. But they shall know that I am Yahuwah Elohim. And it came to pass in the 27th year, in the first month, in the first day of the month, the word of Yahuwah came unto me, saying, Son of man, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, caused his army to serve a great service against Tyrus. Every head was made bald, and every shoulder was peeled. Yet had he no wages, nor his army, for Tyrus, for the service that he had served against it. Therefore thus saith Yahuwah Elohim, Behold, I will give the land of Egypt unto Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and he shall take her multitude, and take her spoil, and take her prey, and it shall be the wages for his army. I have given him the land of Egypt for his labor wherewith he served against it, because they wrought for me, saith Yahuwah Elohim. In that day I will cause the horn of the house of Israel to bud forth, and will give thee the opening of the mouth in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am Yahuwah. So the Most High prophesied that he would crush Egypt's power once and for all, and they would just be a base kingdom from that point onward. See, after the Exodus, hundreds of years later, Egypt had actually rebuilt itself. Remember, Solomon married who? The daughter of Pharaoh. So Egypt had regained prominence and continued to have tributaries throughout the region. So Egypt was regained its power. But after this war with Babylon, he said that the Egyptians will be scattered for 40 years and regather. But when they are regathered, they will be a lowly kingdom. They will be a vassal state. Interesting. Let's see what history says. This is what the script says. Let's see if history lines up with that.
All right.
605 BC, we have the Battle of Carchemish fought between the Babylonians and the Egyptians. 605 BC. We know dates are subject to revision, but basically 605 BC, y'all. Work with me.
Okay.
Okay. Egypt's armies were broken by Nebuchadnezzar, and they became tributaries to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar later returned to Egypt after they revolted against them, and he invaded it and actually took the spoil that he was prophesied to take. It was like 565 BC. So about 40 years later, he actually invaded again and took spoil from them. So first he smashed their armies. Later, when they revolted, he went in and seized the land and seized slaves and spoils. So they were crushed utterly. But what happens after that? Then Persia comes in. After the Babylonian Empire faded, we know that the Persian Empire rose up, right? Then they began ruling over Egypt. So in 525 BC, there was the Battle of Pelusium. The armies of Egypt were smashed by the Persian army, and again, they were made tributaries, or a base kingdom. They're not ruling anyone anymore. Now they're the ones being ruled in perfect fulfillment of prophecy. But that's not all. Then you have Alexander the Greek. The Gentiles call him Alexander the Great, but for us, he's just Alexander the Greek. So, couple hundred years later, he invades Egypt after destroying the Persian navy. The Egyptians didn't even put up a fight. They said, okay, you're our new ruler. We're going to call you Pharaoh. They even worshipped him as a god. Alexander the Greek was worshipped as a god by the Egyptians. Now, we know that Alexander the Greek died young. And we're going to talk about that too, because that was also prophesied about 300 years before he's even born. We're going to get to that in a second. But Ptolemy, one of his 4 generals that took over, established the Ptolemaic line. They were Macedonians, okay? They ruled Egypt for another 300 years. The Ptolemaic line ended with Cleopatra. A lot of people say Cleopatra was black. No, Cleopatra was not. She was a Macedonian. She descends from Ptolemy. Her father was her great father was a Macedonian. So don't let anyone tell you Cleopatra was black. She was a foreign invader to Egypt. Egypt is full of foreigners even unto this day. Again, in fulfillment of prophecy, the Egyptians were scattered among the nations. After, I didn't read Ezekiel chapter 30 because I don't want to spend all that time, but read it on your own. You see that the Egyptians were prophesied to be scattered again into the nations, and they were. And they're still not in they're still not in control of their own country. After the Ptolemaic line ruled Egypt and ended with Cleopatra, remember Cleopatra and Mark Antony revolted against Rome? Octavian or Emperor Augustus came and said, not happening. And both Mark Antony and Cleopatra committed suicide. Remember all that?
Yes, I do.
So they killed themselves, and then the Romans took over. For hundreds of years, the Romans ruled. When Roman rule subsided, then the revived Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, took over all the way from 30 BC to 641 AD. Since then, Egypt has been ruled over by various Arab tribes. And they still rule Egypt to this day. except for 40 years when the British occupied Egypt. But Egypt remains a base kingdom even unto this day. Egypt ain't running nothing. Proven by prophecy every time. Every time. You line up world history, you hold up a world history book, a good one, against this Bible, 100% match. One thing I loved about what Hula wrote in her book, Hidden in Plain Sight, she identified Hammurabi, the first ruler of a civilization in world history. She identified Hammurabi as Nimrod. They changed the names to confuse you, but Hammurabi came up with Hammurabi's Code of Laws in Sumeria. Well, that was Nimrod. So just shout out, Huda, that was a good catch. Loved reading that in the book.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Okay. Last set of prophecies I want to go over. And then I'm going to just kind of wrap it up. Y'all look tired. Okay. Let's talk about Alexander the Great. Okay, let's go to Alexander the Great was prophesied. His rise and early fall, was prophesied by the prophet Daniel. Okay, so let's go to the book of Daniel, chapter 8. We know that Daniel saw the entire series of world empires that would rule over his people even until the time of the end. But very specifically, he saw Alexander the Great. He saw his early rise and his early death. And he also saw what would happen to his empire 300 years before Alexander the Great was even conceived. Daniel chapter 8. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. And I saw a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was at Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. And I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before me, before the river, a ram which had 2 horns. And the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Remember, horns prophetically represent kings, right? Kings. Verse 4, and I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand. But he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler or great anger against him, and smote the ram and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. That's Alexander the Greek, destroying the Persian kings. But the angel's about to interpret that in a second anyway. Verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken. And for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of heaven. So the power of this Greek king was suddenly broken, and 4 smaller kings rose up in his place. That's what Daniel saw. We're about to see the fulfillment of this in just a second. So skip down to verse 16, because then he goes into Antiochus Epiphanes, who is an archetype for the Antichrist. But that's a lesson for another day. It's too deep. Let's go down to verse 16 and stay focused on Alexander the Great. And I heard a man's voice between the banks of Ulai, which called and said, Gabriel, make this man, Daniel, to understand the vision. So he came near where I stood. And when he came, I was afraid and fell upon my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Quick sidebar. angels are really scary when you actually see them. When you read about the prophets, they see the angels, or when they saw Yahushua, or when John the Revelator saw Yahushua in his angelic power and all of it, fell down as though dead. So they're scary, y'all. They're not them cute little things in diapers that you see on. It's not that kind of party. Anyway, moving on. Verse 18, now as he was speaking with me, I was in a deep sleep on my face toward the ground, but he touched me and set me upright. And he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. He'll die and 4 kings will rise up, but it won't be him. They won't be under his power because he'll be dead. That's what the prophecy is interpreted as. We won't go into the latter time of their kingdom because, again, that's the Antichrist prophecies. That's a can of worms so deep that we'll be here all day. Okay, so let's talk about what happened to Alexander the Greek. Alexander the Greek came to power quickly. His father Philip died under kind of mysterious circumstances. Alexander the Greek, he was a Macedonian, not technically a Greek, but Hellenism. He conquered all of the Greek city-states, got all their power, formed a massive army, had a lot of really innovative military tactics, and he went conquering the world. He conquered Egypt, broke the economic might of Persia, then he completely destroyed Persia. It was shocking. It was shocking because the Persians couldn't be touched. It was Darius, I believe, that he overthrew in the seat of power. So he conquered Darius suddenly and became the ruler of all the world. He kept on trying for all the known world. He kept pushing into India, met resistance, and then Alexander the Greek died suddenly and under mysterious circumstances. Some people say he was assassinated. Other people said he caught a wound in battle. He died young. The point is, his horn was broken suddenly in perfect fulfillment of the prophecy contained in this book. And what happened? His generals, the Diadochi, a Greek word meaning successor, they went to war with one another for the remnants of his kingdom. 4 emerged. 4 lesser kings, 4 smaller horns. Their names? Cassander, he ruled over Macedonia and Greece. Ptolemy, who ruled over Egypt. Seleucus, who ruled over Babylon and Syria. Funny thing about Seleucus, he founded the city called Antioch, where the Talmudim were first called Messianics. Remember, we read about that in the book of Acts? It was Alexander's general Seleucus that founded that city, Antioch. Seleucus is also the ancestor of Antiochus Epiphanes, who persecuted our people in the book of Maccabees. All of this stuff connects. And Antiochus Epiphanes is an archetype for the Antichrist. In fact, his name in the Greek means God manifest, because he was an Antichrist figure. Anyway, then you have Lysimachus, who ruled over Turkey, or the history books calls it Asia Minor, but we know it today as Turkey. So Alexander died young, and his 4 generals took over his kingdom, and they split it into 4 parts in perfect fulfillment of Daniel's prophecy. Remember, this occurred 300 years before Alexander the Great was even born. So the prophecies in this book line up perfectly with world history. And that's why when we tell people about the Bible, we need to be in a position to give them a reason to believe, because we're in the last days and no one believes this book, but most people haven't studied it. But when you study it, you see that it is in fact proven by prophecy. And even this awakening is happening in accordance to prophecy. 2 more verses and I'm done. Okay?
Come on with it.
Deuteronomy chapter 30. We're going to read verses 2 and 3, Deuteronomy 30. Even your awakening, which is being fulfilled in this very hour, is in the script. By the way, that's why people are terrified. That's why people come into chat rooms and spew all kind of hatred when they see you saying that you're the real Yehudim, because it's the fulfillment of a prophecy, and it means that the end times are very close. Okay? Deuteronomy chapter 30. Verse 1, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither Yahuwah thy Elohim hath driven thee. Wait, you'll read Deuteronomy 28 and go, that's me. Yeah, that's in the book too. That's in the book too. It's that detailed. It said you would read Deuteronomy 28 and go, man, we're the real Jews. There it is. We just read it. Verse 2. And shalt return unto Yahuwah thy Elohim, and shalt obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day. Thou and thy
children.
I see kids in this room today being raised in Torah. It's the fulfillment of prophecy. Thou and thy children with all thine heart and with all thy soul. Here's how you know it's an end times prophecy. I'm cheating. I'm stealing the verse. All right, 3 verses in them out. That then Yahuwah thy Elohim will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither Yahuwah thy Elohim hath scattered thee. It didn't say he would regather us just from Germany. Just throwing that out there. So in conclusion, I just want to remind everyone that as we dive into this great legacy, know that this book is set apart from all other books because it's proven by prophecy. These words are alive. And our Elohim, in fact, told us the end from the beginning, just like he said he would. So, Shabbat Shalom. I'm grateful for your time and attention. I hope you got something from that.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
That was good, brother.